Welcome to Harlem, an epicenter of black culture, rich with history. Today, I'm gonna meet with Karl Franz Williams of 67 Orange Street, a pioneer who celebrates his neighborhood's history and continues to push it forward. Karl is an absolute master at his craft. Louis Armstrong has jazz, Langston Hughes has poetry, Karl has cocktails. 67 Orange Street has become a centerpiece of this neighborhood, and as someone who loves a good drink, I cannot wait to taste the culture. When you think of the places that are formative to black culture in America, you think of Harlem. In the 1920s, the Harlem Renaissance was the showcase for black music, art, theater, scholarship, and so much more. However, over time, the movement was either exploited or flat out crushed. Another case of wealthy white politicians and businessmen seeking to profit from the continued subjugation of black Americans. The Renaissance came to an end, and for decades, the neighborhood suffered. But in the last 15 years, Karl Franz Williams and others like him have made huge strides to revitalize Harlem into a bustling cultural center, a place where people want to live and businesses are thriving. This energy has drawn the attention of new entrepreneurs and developers, and while the shadow of gentrification looms large, Karl and 67 Orange Street are dedicated to celebrating Harlem's legacy and black roots. What's going on, Karl?
Hey, man, how you feeling?
Good, brother. Good to see you.
Welcome to Harlem.
Karl's first venture, Society Coffee, was a gathering spot for the community, a seed from which a prosperous new Harlem could grow. Society's legacy is still around, and in honor of Karl's history, we're walking down to one of his favorite local coffee shops. You opened a coffee shop in Harlem. Any stories about this neighborhood? You know, it's evolved a lot.
At first, everybody who was opening businesses around here looked like me, right? You know, black and brown people. Now you see different types of people opening businesses as well. I actually had someone ask me, but you know, like, you're actually partially responsible for the gentrification.
Explain that to me.
No, they're like, I mean, your business has this sort of, they used to say downtown feel, right?
Right.
And so it makes it comfortable for more people to come up, right?
Mm-hmm.
You know?
Mm-hmm.
To me, the problem with that statement is that it expresses this idea that if it's good, if it's well curated, if the food is great, if the drinks are great,
It's no longer for us.
Exactly, it's not really for black people.
Does that come into your mind then? I mean, when you try and balance trying to take care of, support this neighborhood that you care about, also trying to be successful in your own business and balancing those perceptions?
The neighborhood over time starts to look less and less like you.
Right.
Now, one of the great things about Harlem is Harlem has always been and will always have this black community, this black energy. Really the message that I want to put out there is for the black entrepreneur, this is still a neighborhood where you can come and be successful. You know that you're going to have support from people like me from Harlem Park to Park and others who are going to say, hey, how can we help you to make sure that you're successful here?
Right.
Because that's what I want to see. I don't want to see it go all the way the other way.
Push all the other way.
You know? You want to grab some coffee?
I would love a coffee.
Yeah. So this coffee shop has special meaning to me because when the owner opened it, he came to me and he was just like, you kind of laid out the blueprint for how this could happen. When you open Society Coffee, it showed me that this could be done, it could really work here. You don't always get that, or someone coming to you and saying, thank you for what you did.
Yeah.
And that inspired me to do this.
That's great.
You know, so I always feel home when I walk in.
I love it. All right, we touched on your origins with coffee. We got a cup, but I'm really here for the cocktails. So should we
what's up. I got
head back?
Yeah, let's do it.
All right, let's go. You might have noticed, 67 Orange's light on branding, just dark purple curtains and a number by the door. It's a classic look, nodding back to prohibition and the days of the speakeasy, when advertising was as likely to get you arrested as it was to bring you business.
Hey man, welcome.
Thank you.
67 Orange Street.
This is it.
Harlem's first modern speakeasy.
Mm-hmm.
I got one drink I want to start out with. I want to make you this drink. It's called the Hedonist. And the name is probably, the name is obviously pretty provocative.
Sounds fitting, I guess.
This is a citrus, I guess you could almost call it like a take on a dark and stormy.
Mm-hmm.
So making one for you and one for me.
You're a Renaissance man. You've done a lot in your career. You know, you had coffee down the street. Where'd this love of cocktails come from?
You know, part of it sort of was in the same vein of what I was doing with coffee. It was putting together flavors, tasting through spirits, building around formulas. Like that to me was just so intriguing.
What have you added here so far?
This is a curry simple syrup.
I smell it?
Yeah, absolutely. And we add a little bit of Creole bitters to that as well. So that's what gets that color and that flavor. I'm playing with this rum. This is a collaboration between two Black-owned brands.
That's
so
phenomenal.
It's real dope.
So they age that rum in the whiskey barrels, right?
Exactly.
Yep.
Yep. Now the other thing that's going into this one is this. So I make this. This is
You make this?
Yeah, that is my ginger beer.
Oh, wow. So what's the story behind the name?
So Uncle Waithley is my grandfather.
This ginger beer is an ode to Karl's grandfather, who lived to be 100 years old. It's exactly what you'd expect from Karl, complex and creative. It features a surprising bit of heat and flavor from the Scotch bonnet peppers. It's a well-rounded flavor. It's not just heat for the sense of heat. I think it plays really, really well with that ginger, and that turmeric leaves just kind of that's like an herbal mouth coating. I don't know. It's one of the most unique ginger beers I think I've ever tasted. Dope. Cheers, brother. Thank you.
Absolutely.
That's fantastic.
So you see the idea here is, you get those flavors, but it's also that balance.
Yep.
You're playing with, it's not overly sweet, it's not cloying. You can drink this and just feel refreshed, know?
It's almost dangerous. It's like sitting on the front stoop in the summer, like drinking lemonade. Like you could crush these all day.
There's the hedonism part.
Yep, exactly. If there's one thing you learn from hanging out with Karl, it's that he knows everything about Harlem, including the incredible history behind how 67 Orange Street got its name.
I started to just explore stories, and I came across the story of Almack's Dance Hall. So Almack's Dance Hall was one of the first Black-owned bars in New York City.
Okay.
So we're talking 1840s, and it was opened by a Black guy named Pete Williams. He was living in Europe somewhere and falls in love with a white woman. Her family is like, this cannot work. So you have two options, like take this bag and leave.
And leave.
Or we'll kill you, right? So, it was kind of an offer he couldn't refuse, took the money, left, came back here, brokenhearted, but committed to like building something. And so he opened Almack's Dance Hall. It's in 5 Points, which was the first free Black neighborhood. The culture that influenced the Harlem Renaissance began down in 5 Points. He's like, the Irish, they got the jig, I'm gonna let them do the jig, I'm gonna let Black people do the shuffle, put it all together, we have these dance competitions.
I love it.
I was just like, if I could channel any of that, the connectivity, the people coming together, then I've got something. So 67 Orange Street was the last known address of Almack's Dance Hall. So that's how it all came together.
I will say, I'm gonna need more of your drinks. This is not gonna be enough. So I think we need to taste our way through what 67 Orange has to offer, because this was fantastic and I'm excited to see what else you got, brother. Making drinks for Karl and I are Leo and David, two men who, along with Karl himself, form the heart and soul of 67 Orange Street. These guys are the best in the business, and it's such a joy to watch them work.
So this is a drink called the Lyonnaise. This is a split base cocktail. So we're using both rum and cognac. The last part of it, though, is fruity, but it's interesting fruit, which is pineapple.
Oh my gosh, I gotta take another sip. Definitely a lot of ginger. It's different than, and I love it.
The whole idea here is about the craft and craftsmanship, right? So being a chef, I mean, you get it. People look at your plates and they're like, I'm hungry, I'm mesmerized, I almost don't want to touch it, but I can't wait to touch it, right? And that's what we want when we.
Well, this is that like eat with your eyes first situation. I mean, you looked at it and beautiful, from the color to the garnish.
You see something like this, your first thought is like, oh my God, is that gonna be really sweet?
I was thinking like a punch. Like it looked like it was gonna show up like a punch that was gonna be very sweet, and it's not.
Right, sweet's that thing that you do in drinks to just make, everyone's gonna love it if it's sweet, but the reality is most people don't want that. There's only so much you can drink. That's my, PSA, when making a drink, is like, sweet is not the answer.
Sugar's not the answer.
Sugar's not the answer, right? It's balance it out.
Drink number 2 is a fresh take on a classic, the Porn Star Martini. Made with spiced rum and passion fruit, Karl's Caribbean Peace Star is an homage to the Porn Star Martini's creator, Douglas Ankra, a Black bartender who was foundational to the modern cocktail movement in the 90s. With an example of present-day Black excellence in front of us, the conversation turns to the original era of Black excellence in Harlem, the Harlem Renaissance.
When you think about, Harlem You think about the Harlem Renaissance.
Absolutely.
That period of time in the 1920s and 30s where you had this amazing emergence, music and poetry and writing, and it was actually very intentional. So a lot of people don't know the Harlem Renaissance was an intentional effort by Black intellectuals and artists to be able to come together to showcase their talent. And what a lot of people also don't realize was that the backdrop to that was actually Prohibition. When Prohibition happened, the city became this over-policed area. And in Harlem, it wasn't that way.
Because actually the police just weren't coming into this area.
They weren't policing it the same way. And so there was all of this incredible entertainment, this incredible experience that was happening uptown like nowhere else. Prohibition ends, the entire city celebrating, partying, and everything like that. And so what the city did, they established a fee for getting a liquor license to legally serve alcohol. And that license at the time was about $500, which is the equivalent today of $12,000. No one up here could afford it. Exactly. So,
and that was intentional.
Of course it was. The local economy here just took a really hard hit. But sort of tying it back, when you think about like this culture, this speakeasies, that was Harlem Renaissance, and that's what this was.
Cheers, man. Thank you for sharing. The hits keep coming as Leo and David craft a few more incredible cocktails. First, Leo gives us 67 Orange's unique take on a spicy margarita, the Baxter Street, made with jalapeno-infused tequila, agave, and lime. Ooh, get that heat right up front. David follows up with a velvety smooth Victorious Gentleman, built with rye, vermouth, and a few dashes of espresso bitters. It's a rich, spirit-forward cocktail that lives up to its name. That tastes like money. That tastes like power. You know what I mean? Like you feel like you want to sit back in like a big booth. Yeah. You just closed the deal. That's your victory lap. You're gonna have a cigar. And it's like, I felt good just tasting that. The show doesn't stop there. Next is a cocktail worthy of a revolution, made with gin, sorrel-infused syrup, egg whites, and rosewater. This is the Rosa Parks. Can I first just talk about how beautiful this is? Like I barely want to drink it. That is gorgeous.
Yeah.
Mustache going on. Wow, now that's my kind of cocktail. I love the bitterness. I love the bitterness, and I think that the egg whites, the flip aspect of it, tones that bitterness down a little bit, and it just gives that like mouth coating feel. I mean, it is almost like marshmallow on top. That's gorgeous. What's the sprinkle on top?
That is a little bit of rose powder.
As we, talking about the story and our history and Black excellence, I love that the name is Rosa Parks. We can't talk about our journey without mentioning Rosa Parks.
Yep.
There's rose water, it's a rose-colored drink.
Yep.
What came first?
Actually, the cocktail came first. David had made it, and he started thinking about the name and where to go, and then we think about all the rose elements, but wanting to celebrate the culture. I tell my team, you kind of start, at least initially, from the experience. Okay. What do you want to happen? Have a direction. Where do you want to get to?
Intention.
You can start to, intention, yeah. Yep. You start to pull the pieces together. You can start from a spirit. You're tasting something, and it's taking you along that journey to where you want to get to. You can also start from a structure. Most classic cocktails are structures that can be applied in various different ways. The old fashioned is the best example. And so when you understand those structures, and then when you've tasted, so that's sort of the third part of it, is tasting a lot.
Right. That's how you learn how your own palate works, though, because you can read as much as you want, but we both taste differently. So tasting alcohol is actually hard. Because it's hard and it's not, right? It's like, oh yeah, all right, but at some point you're not tasting, right,
you're just
drinking. Then you're drinking.
You're just drinking, exactly. You're not tasting, you're drinking.
The scent of tobacco and wood chips are in the air, imparting flavor and complexity to a mix of bourbon, port, ginger liqueur, and Benedictine. For Karl, his twist on a classic Manhattan represents his place in the predominantly white cocktail world. He's got great respect for the past, but he's also here to push things forward with his own perspective.
This is the Manhattan After Dark. What are you tasting?
The thing that's blowing me away is how enjoyable that smoke is.
Yeah. There's a huge underrepresentation,
of course,
of people of color in the sort of in the high-end spirits world.
Of course, that's not even that's an understatement.
It is an understatement. I walk into these rooms sometimes, and I'm very used to being the only or one of very few.
Right.
Alcohol has been historically a part of every culture. For it to now be this thing where certain cultures feel like it is theirs to own is unfortunate. So I like the idea of being able to create things like this that showcase that skill, but at the same time transcend and last and become part of our lexicon.
I mean, we all want that recognition. I mean, I go through the same thing. Every culture has food. We've all been cooking our entire lives and generally walk into a room of chefs and I'm the only. So, I mean, I totally feel that. And I think, what you've created here, again, shows your acumen for your craft and the business that you've created, and everybody should be taking notice. So that's what we're here to do.
Thank you, man. Cheers.
It's really delicious. We've only got one drink left, and it's one of 67's most celebrated cocktails. No one describes it better than Karl himself.
This is a gin cocktail. The blackberry it's got elderflower in there, lavender in there as well. Of course, lemon. It's called the color purple. The reason is obvious.
Right. Wow, it's viscous. I mean, it's got some body to it. I like that it's alcohol forward. Like, I can tell that I'm drinking a cocktail.
Yep.
But it also almost tastes like a fruit roll up. Like, it's got this berry complexity to it.
The name, the color purple, is all of it's 67. You start thinking about Prince and music, and there's so much culture wrapped into that. That's all of this in a lot of ways.
So if you were to put yourself in a glass, you're 67 orange.
Well, if I was to put 67 orange in a glass,
yeah.
This is it. For me, it's the past and it's the future in one. To see all of this stuff really coming together the way it has, it's continuing to create these experiences. What I'm excited to see is some of the people who are here and what they're gonna do next.
Right.
I would, of course, hate to see them go. We built this together, but I would also love to see what they create and what they do and everything else they do. So that is, to me, that is both the paradox and the beauty,
right,
and the beauty of this.
Especially in our industry. I mean, from bars, restaurants, hospitality, they can become transient industries. People can bounce around this and that, and sometimes you'll have people that'll spend years with you. And people, how do you feel when your sous chef or your lead bartender leaves and does their own thing? And I say, I feel freaking great. That makes me know that I did it right, especially as a black man owning a business and having these people branch out. I mean, that builds your tree. That is, that's your family tree. The greatest thing you can do is produce people that move on and do great things.
Absolutely.
And you are clearly doing that. The drive to see your employees succeed mirrors the drive to see your community succeed. It's about taking pride in your accomplishments and finding joy in supporting those around you. Since Karl has shared so many amazing drinks with me, I thought I'd share my favorite with him. Arguably the oldest recorded cocktail in the world, the Sazerac, made with a very important whiskey.
It was originally made with cognac. The name of the drink, Sazerac, was the name of the cognac that was being used in it. But in America, the American whiskey was really growing in popularity, and the drink ultimately was moved over. But making it with this whiskey in particular, and the story behind this whiskey.
I love that you talked about the whiskey that we're using, because initially, yes, it was a brandy forward drink. But I like to use a whiskey that speaks to our culture, to our history. A man named Uncle Nearest who never ever got his due, and finally it's been shared with us.
Cheers. That's delicious. That's delicious. And the story of Uncle Nearest and being an enslaved person, rising above his circumstances, becoming so great that no one could make a whiskey as good as he could. How do we continue to build off of that? How do we launch more talented black folks into the same stratosphere that Uncle Nearest is in right now? Like, if we were to say, okay, the Hog, 67 Orange, like we've hit it, I'm good, and we forget that there's so many to pull up as well. There's so many that have incredible talent.
You know how we do that?
Yeah.
We continue to taste the culture.
There we go. I love that. Yes.
Harlem was a haven of black excellence when there were few others, and its cultural importance can't be overstated. Its resurgence is a signal that black arts, music, and business are alive and well in America and more vibrant than ever. Some aspects of the neighborhood will inevitably evolve, but Harlem is anchored by its history, by its legacy, and by people like Karl. That much will never change.